Today we will explore the life of one of the most famous and wealthy kings in history, King Solomon. Known for his immense wisdom, Solomon also stood out for building the magnificent Temple of Jerusalem. However, besides his wealth and achievements, Solomon had a quite complex personal life, with a total of 1,000 women, including 700 wives and 300 concubines. This impressive number of marriages is a record among the kings of Israel. Interestingly, many might think having so many wives was a privilege, but this choice had serious consequences. Several of these marriages were not appropriate according to the norms of the time and ended up bringing problems for Solomon. Negative influences from these unions compromised his judgment and contributed to the deterioration of his reign, despite his wisdom and power. In our video today, we will delve deeper into who these women were and how they directly influenced Solomon's life and reign. Stay tuned to discover more about this fascinating story. Firstly, it is interesting to note that many of Solomon's wives were not from Israel, but rather princesses brought from foreign nations. These marriages were part of diplomatic strategies to ensure peace between Israel and its neighboring countries. This type of political practice was common at the time, but it brought negative consequences, both for Solomon and for the Kingdom of Israel, mainly in spiritual terms. In the period described by the Old Testament, it was quite usual for kings and leaders to have multiple wives and concubines, a common practice in many kingdoms of the Near East. Some of these monarchs accumulated more than 2,000 women. In Israel, although it was not ideal according to divine laws, polygamy was accepted and even regulated by Mosaic law. King David, father of Solomon, also had several wives and concubines. It is likely that Solomon inherited some of these women, incorporating them into his royal harem upon ascending the throne. This practice continued with his son Rehoboam, who had 18 wives and 60 concubines. Polygamy served as a political strategy among kings to strengthen alliances and expand the influence of the kingdom. Solomon, in particular, used this practice to increase the power of Israel and maintain political stability, since during his reign, the country faced few external threats. The Bible, especially in the first book of Kings, chapter 11, suggests that Solomon's marriages were not just political arrangements. It seems that the king also had genuine feelings for his wives and concubines. This emotional and physical connection with so many women, however, eventually distanced him from his spiritual duties. Interestingly, although Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines, the Bible highlights the name of just one, Naamah, an Ammonite woman. Scholars suggest that Naamah might have been Solomon's first wife, as she is the mother of Rehoboam, who was born before Solomon ascended to the throne of Israel. In addition to her, the Bible reports that Solomon married the daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh, whose names are not mentioned. It is believed that this pharaoh belonged to the 21st Egyptian dynasty. Solomon also had wives of various nationalities, including women from Egypt, Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and Heth. An even more intriguing aspect is the figure of the Shulamite woman mentioned in the Song of Songs, a poetic book that many believe was written by Solomon. This text is often interpreted in the Judeo-Christian tradition as a celebration of romantic love, possibly representing the woman Solomon loved the most. The identity of the Shulamite woman, mentioned in the Bible only as a country girl, remains uncertain. The Song of Songs, where she appears, is interpreted in various ways by scholars. Some believe that the poem involves three main characters: the Shulamite girl herself, a shepherd, and a king. In this interpretation, the king tries to interfere in the relationship between the young woman and her beloved shepherd. If we assume that the king is Solomon, this could suggest that his love for the Shulamite woman was unrequited, adding a layer of complexity to the poem. The most common interpretation, however, is that the Shulamite was the woman Solomon loved the most, standing out among his 700 wives and 300 concubines. Despite this, the laws of Israel, especially for kings, warned against accumulating wives, as described in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 17 verse 17. Solomon not only disregarded this warning, but also ignored another important guideline: avoiding marriages with foreign women. Such unions were discouraged because they could lead the Israelites away from their faith, causing them to worship other gods. This was a real risk, historically evidenced when the Israelites were influenced by erroneous cultural practices such as the immorality of the Moabites during the time of Moses. Solomon's numerous wives, many of them foreign, had a profound impact on his life and the decisions he made as king. These wives brought their own pagan religious beliefs and practices to Israel. Over time, these influences caused Solomon to drift away from God, leading him to build altars to gods of other cultures and even to participate in these idolatrous practices. Among the gods worshipped by Solomon were Astarte, the goddess of love and fertility, venerated by the people of Tyre and Sidon, and Molech, a deity revered in Ammon, often associated with disturbing rituals, including human sacrifices. By getting involved and supporting these pagan rituals, Solomon not only disobeyed God, but also compromised the spiritual health of the entire kingdom of Israel. At the beginning of his reign, Solomon was known for his exceptional wisdom, but over time he allowed negative influences to shape his soul. His marriages to women of different beliefs were a clear violation of divine laws, and this disobedience had devastating consequences. Solomon's heart, once fully devoted to God, became divided, leading him down a path of idolatry and abandonment of his faith, which eventually contributed to the division of the kingdom of Israel under the rule of his son Rehoboam. Solomon is often celebrated in history as one of the wisest, most prosperous, and influential kings. His ability to judge wisely and deeply understand issues earned him respect and admiration throughout the ancient world. During his reign, the kingdom of Israel reached its peak in terms of wealth and power, attracting merchants and diplomats from distant lands who sought his alliances and advice. However, despite his immense material and intellectual success, Solomon had a significant flaw. He strayed from the spiritual principles that should have guided his governance. Although he began his reign with a deep devotion to God, his faith weakened over time. Influenced by his numerous foreign wives who introduced their religious beliefs and practices into Israel, Solomon gradually began to adopt these foreign customs. These influences contradicted the commandments he was meant to follow, leading him further and further away from the principles that should have guided his reign. The Bible recounts Solomon's errors in a frank and direct manner, showing that even the most revered figures are fallible. Solomon, despite starting his reign with great aspirations and a solid commitment to divine laws, saw his end marked by regret and disillusionment. The decisions he made, influenced by his marital alliances and the gradual distancing from his faith, had negative impacts not only on him, but on the entire kingdom of Israel. God, in his justice and mercy, allowed Solomon to face difficulties and challenges as a form of correction. These challenges were direct consequences of the king's actions, who deviated from divine commandments, which guide leaders to avoid idolatrous practices and maintain exclusive devotion to the God of Israel. Despite Solomon's flaws and deviations, the grace of God still manifested in his life and reign. The mercy that God had abundantly shown to David, Solomon's father, was also extended to the son, ensuring that the kingdom would not be taken from him during his lifetime. This divine decision not only reflects God's enduring love for David, but also his promise to preserve the royal lineage from which the Messiah would eventually emerge. Maintenance of David's dynasty, despite Solomon's mistakes, illustrates a fundamental truth of the Scriptures. God often chooses to work through imperfect people, using their errors as opportunities to reveal his loyalty and redemptive purposes. In this context, Solomon's multiple wives are not just a historical detail, but also a significant teaching point in the Scriptures. They show how personal decisions, especially those related to intimate relationships, can have profound and lasting impacts not only on an individual's life, but on an entire community or nation. This aspect of Solomon's life serves as a warning and a lesson to Bible readers about the importance of choosing partners who share and reinforce their spiritual beliefs and values. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, we find a verse that suggests Solomon might have had a moment of deep reflection on the nature of marital relationships. The text says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and receives favor from the Lord." If indeed Solomon wrote these words, they could indicate a late realization that the true blessing in relationships is not found in the number of wives or concubines, but in the quality of a sincere commitment and in harmony with divine principles. Such recognition suggests that Solomon, perhaps later in his life, realized that polygamy complicated both his spiritual life and his governance, steering him away from the values he should have preserved. This realization, if achieved by him, marks a moment of clarity where Solomon could have better understood the divine teachings on marriage and fidelity, which emphasize the importance of depth and commitment over the pursuit of quantity and external prestige. If Solomon had maintained his commitment to God throughout his life, he probably would not have strayed from the path that shows that a man's true strength and success are linked to his faith and spiritual dedication. If he had firmly followed this principle, he might have avoided many of the tragedies that ultimately marked his reign and his legacy. Thus, Solomon's life makes us think about the consequences of our choices, especially in the most personal and intimate matters. It shows that even the wisest people can learn important lessons about love, relationships, and the importance of being faithful to one's own principles. Reflecting on this, we see how the decisions we make can influence not only our lives, but also those of the people around us for many generations. Therefore, the story of Solomon is not just about an ancient king, but also a lesson on the common challenges faced by all who try to live according to their deepest values. From him, we learn the importance of maintaining integrity and loyalty, even in the face of temptations and trials, highlighting that true power and success come from following elevated and enduring principles. Now let us know in the comments if you knew how many wives Solomon had, and subscribe to the channel to follow more videos like this one.